Hey friends, welcome back. I'm so excited because today on the show, Brenna McGowan from the Social Rescue is back again. She was back a couple of weeks ago when we talked all about email marketing, and that episode was so popular, I think we almost broke the internet. Seriously. But this time she comes back and she talks all about the nitty-gritty of email marketing. You guys are going to want to listen to this podcast and take notes. Episode 85 starts right now. Hey there, welcome to the Lora Shipman Show. We hang out here weekly to talk about things like social media, entrepreneurship, marketing, tools, strategies, tips, and it all starts right now. Hey there, before we get started with this show, I just want to share my passion with you. I love teaching people just like you how to master social media for business, breaking it down into easy to consume and easy to execute steps so that you can see immediate results. So whether you want to start a social media consultancy or grow your brand's presence on social media, I can help. I can help you get started and master all the things that you need to know. So I want you to go over to my website. It is filled with resources, tools, tips, and courses. Visit lorashipman.com. That's LORA shipman.com to get all the goods. Now, you ready for the show? I know I am. Let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. I'm so excited because I have here back with me Brenna McGowan from the Social Rescue, which I'm so excited because she is going to share with us some real detailed information when it comes to putting together your email campaign for your business. Now, if you missed our last episode, we spoke on June 17th. It was episode 76, and we spoke all about demystifying social media marketing and why you really need to use it for your business. So you don't need to listen to that episode first, but at the end of this episode, you might want to go back and listen to that one because it was a really good one. Brenna, thank you so much for coming back. I'm so excited you're here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So for those of our listeners who haven't met you before or don't know exactly what you do, can you give them a snapshot and a look into everything Social Rescue?
Yes, it's definitely been an evolving process, but currently I work as an email marketing strategist, and I help homeowners. I help business owners come up with strategies and ways to utilize email marketing in their business.
That's really okay, good. Because I think email marketing is one of those tools that are maybe underutilized by businesses, maybe because they don't really understand how to use it and what to put in there and everything that's involved. So if you were going to kind of tell us, I guess maybe, why is it so important, first off, to just totally embrace email marketing?
Well, I think as I've been joking around the last few weeks, Instagram keeps doing me huge favors in my own marketing by, I think they've been down a couple of times since in the last month. And so what people don't think about, and we touched upon this the last time that we talked, is what people don't realize is that no matter what platform you have followers on, you don't own these followers. So getting someone onto your email list allows you to stay in contact with them on, first, a more personal level, and second, it allows you to be in control of that list, unlike when Instagram goes down or any of these other platforms, that you don't have control of those followers. So that's probably the biggest reason why.
I like that because I have experienced that as well. And if you don't have your social media platforms, how else are you going to communicate with these people? So that kind of brings us to our first question is like, okay, great. You have this list and everything, and you're supposed to be communicating with the people on that list. What kind of content, what do you put into those emails that you create?
I think I've been doing a lot of market research these last few weeks, and I think that people overcomplicate this. And I think that I think there's a lot of education about Instagram out there about what you should be putting on your content calendar. And I think you can apply that to your email marketing. So what I recommend, and this would be not so much if you're going through a launch, but for your regular, monthly and weekly emails, is creating some type of content calendar. So it's very clear at the beginning of the month, what you're going to be writing about each week. Because the goal here, and I said this last time, is monthly at minimum of keeping in contact with our email list. But weekly is preferable. And there's, some people who do it even more often than weekly. But what you can do is kind of take a look at your month and break it up like you would Instagram. So you can go in and I like the Gary Vaynerchuk jab, 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 right hook, which is for every 3 value emails, you could throw in a sales email. So that means that when you look at your content calendar for the month, one can be sales. Then you could go in and break it up to whether it's inspiration, educational, whether you're going into some type of entertainment, and you can break up your emails in those categories as well, so that each week that this is going to be at least your the category of writing that you're going to go into. And then from there, once you have your categories set out, you can set out like, obviously for your sales one, you could think of, okay, what am I selling? What am I pushing? And then can I back up whatever my sales email is going to be with content that doesn't necessarily maybe sell, but kind of speaks to that person as why they might need the sale when it comes. So, I'm sorry, I think you were going to ask me a question.
No, I was just like, that's really good. So you're kind of like dripping a little bit of information, not necessarily a hard sell or anything in those first 3 emails, but it's just definitely something that supports what's going to come in that 4th one.
Exactly.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, for example, you could do for your educational email for the month. And these are categories that you do not have to abide by. These are just ideas. Where your educational one, you could be talking about something that's topic and give a quick tip. And that quick tip could be something that when you come in for your sale, you could apply of, okay, this is why I might need whatever this person is selling based on these tips. Or if you're doing a behind the scenes, maybe you're talking about a question that a client has asked you, and you're just doing in an email kind of a quick Q&A. I think Q&As are some of my favorite to do with clients that I have, because we're not having to create or think of new content. The client is telling us what a pain point is, and we're answering it in an email, which can also speak to what our overall sales objective is. So I think that instead of and I think what happens is people sit in front of a keyboard and go, I don't know what to type. So when we categorize things out, similar to how we would on our Instagram content calendar, we're able to go in and figure out what we should write. And then once we go a step deeper, I'm a strong believer that once we have these categories in our head, we start finding content to document on our daily lives a lot more easily. So what I mean by that is when I know I'm going to do one, I'm going to do an inspirational email, because I know that's coming up. When I find something inspirational during the month, I take note of that so I can use it in an email later on. So once we have these categories, it actually, in some respect, when it comes to email marketing, you can write about anything. So that gives us such a huge, broad topic. So then we can kind of streamline that down into these categories of, now that we know we can write about anything, personal stories in our lives, things that are going on with our clients. Once we put put all of these things into category buckets, we can then apply them to our emails a lot more easily.
So, okay, can you just go over what those different categories are again? So you said inspirational, educational.
Let's see, entertainment, education, inspiration, motivation, behind the scenes, and sales. Those are like my 5 main categories that I usually write something on. Okay.
So if we could just kind of go down a little rabbit hole, because I think people might have questions about this, especially if they're not used to writing in this format before. Let's take inspirational emails, for example. What does that really look like? Like, how do we write an inspirational email to our audience? Like, what does that look like?
Great question. So how I write all these emails, and this kind of goes in a step deeper. For most of my emails, I'm simply using everyday stories that are going on in my life. And that's what I recommend to clients. What's going on in your regular life that you can apply to your business. So once again, if I read a quote that I find that's inspirational, when I read that quote, what did it make me think of? How did it make me feel? Did the quote remind me of something that's gone on previously in my life or my current situation? And use that as the basis of my email that I'm sending out. I think a lot of times we get to where we think we have to, Laura Belgray, who's a fantastic copywriter, she helped me think about this even further, which is we think when it comes to value that we have to be giving, we think as value as tips or education. Value to a person could be making them feel understood. Value to a person could be making them feel like they're a little bit less alone in this business journey. It could be making them laugh. So I think there's so many ways that we can invoke value to on our email list without having to do, like we were talking about, a hard sale or hard tips. And I think sometimes too, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go. Finish with your thought there.
Oh, now I think I forgot what I was going to say. So go ahead and ask me your question.
Well, so I was going to ask you about behind the scenes though, too, because how does that relate to somebody who's on the receiving end of behind the scenes?
Well, I think part of it is I think we're all naturally a little nosy. So creating this personal connection with someone, letting them know what we're doing behind the scenes. Actually, the other thing that I did in my market research, and I heard again and again when I asked people why they either worked with me or why they would choose to work with me, it's because they said they felt like they knew me. Not because they thought I was, the number one best emailer ever, which I'm sure that has something to do with it, but because they felt like they had a personal connection to me. And they said they would actually choose someone who's maybe what I would say, for lack of better words, a little higher up on the totem pole than me because they knew me and they trusted me. So doing those behind the scenes gives people a glimpse into what's going on with you and, helps us create that personal connection, which sometimes I think we feel like we're missing because we're all online all the time.
So how personal do you go with that behind the scenes stuff? Is it just behind the scenes in your business or is it behind the scenes in your daily life? Is it struggles? Like, what is it that we're looking to do here?
Well, two things. I think however you can I don't think you should go so behind the scenes that it doesn't make sense to your business whatsoever. Although I do think there's a lot of things that happen in our regular life that we can really parallel to what's going on in our business or our business lives. We could talk about how, I'm just throwing out a quick example here, but how I'm looking at this huge pile of dishes and my messy kitchen and my messy this, and this kind of reminds me how my inbox looks like, these simple parallels that we can kind of pull over. The other thing, when I go personal, whether it's especially like on Instagram or or onto my emails, I do something because I'm literally a soccer mom. I have a daughter in competitive soccer. I do the soccer mom test. That's what I call it. And the soccer mom test is, would I tell a mom this that I'm chatting with at a soccer game? And if the answer is no, then I really evaluate, okay, maybe this is a little too personal. Maybe this is something that I don't need to share. And then I think you could take that once again a step further too. Like maybe you have buckets of your life that you share with people, but then some things are, really off limits. I think of Jenna Kutcher when I listen to her podcast. She talks about, we all feel like we really know Jenna Kutcher. And she's like, no, you really don't know a lot of what's going on, but we all feel like we do, right? So I don't think that we should convolute being personal with oversharing necessarily. And I think if it feels sometimes I think it's good to be vulnerable, but I think if it makes you feel real icky, then it's probably not the thing, at least at this point in time, that you want to share with your audience.
So do you think like this is a learned skill, like to be able to go personal, go vulnerable and behind the scenes? And if it is a learned skill, how do we learn it, or how do we practice it so that we're mastering it, so it's not like that oversharing type thing? Do you have any tips for that?
Oh,
Or I
gosh.
know.
I kind of, I don't know. I think once again, it goes to, I think this is for each person. This is going to be individualized.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of look at it like the twisting of a knob. Like I would say that quite honestly, before I started my own, started Social Rescue, I wasn't even on social media personally. Like I did it for clients, but I felt like it was a little too, invasive for me at that time. And over time, I've kind of been switching this knob where I take it like one step further and see how I feel. And that's the thing of it too. I mean, unless you're putting out there something extremely, extremely personal, it's one post. I think we feel it more than maybe, our audience may even know it. So sometimes I'll push the limit a little bit in terms that I feel comfortable enough. And then I kind of see where it goes. And it's amazing. I feel like every time I let myself be a little bit more vulnerable, which goes against probably my core to some degree, I see where people are like, oh my gosh, like, yes, like I totally, it's some of my best, responses come from these vulnerable posts. And it reminds me of something I've always talked about. This is kind of going off subject a little bit, but I've talked about how I don't love the word love the term being authentic, because it doesn't feel authentic to me when we say it. And I was listening to Seth, is it Godin or Godin's new book? And of course, I can't remember. It's the one with the orange cover, but he talked about this. I was listening the other day, and he talked about how people want to feel understood. That's one of our basics. So I think it's not so much that people want you to be authentic, meaning you're bearing your soul. They want to feel like you understand them and that you understand what they're going through. So I always try and take it on those meters of, is this something is it going to help someone feel more understood in their own journey of what they're doing?
I like that. And it's a good way to understand how, when people always say, well, be relatable. And I'm like, what does that even mean? But I think it's what you say about being understood, that just understanding people's journey. I really like the way that you put that. That makes so much sense. Okay. So the categories were inspiration. We got that now. Education, I think, is kind of self-explanatory. You're going to teach somebody something.
Exactly.
And then entertaining, you're going to make people laugh or feel some sort of an emotion or something through what the written word is. And behind the scenes, we went through that. And then there's that sales email, which to me, I'm like probably the planet's worst salesperson. So for me to sit there and even think about putting together a sales email, I don't even know what that would look like. It's kind of bigger than I am.
And when I say sales email, all of my emails, and the free guide that we're going to mention today kind of goes over this in more depth. I'm always doing something with a story. So it's not that you can't go in once in a while and just say, hey, this is a product I got. Do you want to buy it? But I always go in with, I personally love the entertainment part of it. So I may combine some entertainment into my sales email, or maybe I take some of that education piece and use, a statistic or something and talk about it, and then talk about why they need my sales. So when I say sales, I would think of, okay, what's my major call to action of something that I really want someone to take action on? And then I'll find a story that I can kind of create this story in my email to talk about it. Then I'll create a transition or a segue sentence, and then I'll go into my sales. So, and what this does also is when we do these type of sales emails, it doesn't feel so salesy, right? Because you're not shoving something. I'm just telling you about a story or experience and how this relates back to how I can help you in my business solve maybe this pain point that I mentioned in my story.
I love that you say to combine categories, because I think that takes the pressure off that sales email. Like you just said, like this, I love that, okay, that makes that a lot easier for me.
And for instance, too, like I'll mention an email that I wrote last week. And I wrote about a new deodorant that I found. Like this was one of my favorite emails I wrote recently, because it was, something I think probably most women may understand, that they're trying to always find a deodorant that works. And then I went through like this whole story about, but what I wanted them to do at the end, I wanted them to click to my website to read a blog that really had nothing to do about deodorant. But I was able to create a story and create a parallel where I was like, okay, now that I kind of took you down this journey, this is where I want you to click. So I don't think that you have to be, when I say sales, I'm thinking, okay, what's a hard click, a hard action I want someone to take? But I'm probably taking these other categories that we previously mentioning and sprinkling them into my final sales email.
That's okay. That's really cool. I remember that email. I read that email. That was a good one. So you're saying like a sales call to action can be a hard click too. It doesn't necessarily have to be closing the sale in that email, but it just needs to get them to flow over to where you want them to end up ultimately. And then
exactly.
And from there they can make their sales decision. Okay.
And sometimes we're just nurturing our list. When we're writing, kind of like even on Instagram, like we're just talking and having a conversation, because a conversation in an email in my mind goes one step deeper than a conversation on a social platform. So you're in someone's inbox. So, it doesn't have to be where it has to be super, super structured either in terms of sale. Of course we always want to ask, but I think my email for this week is where I'm talking about, I went into a shop, America's Tires Company, and I needed my tires, I'm telling you this because sometimes I think examples help. Yes. That I needed my tires balanced and rotated because I'm horrible about it, but I had to drive about 4 hours for a client's party. And I'm like, okay, I need to go do this. And so my husband's like, I think this shop is free to get your tires, America's Tires Company. It's free to go get this done. And I was like, okay. So I called them and I made an appointment and I walked in and they took my name, they took my keys. They asked me if I think they even asked me if I wanted a drink. Then they asked me if I wanted a text because I was going to walk and do some shopping. And then I came back and I was like, okay, like as soon as I get back, they're going to tell me that I need 4 new tires, that I need, work done to my car. And so I got back and I went over and some guy came out to help me and he asked me which car was mine. He handed me my keys and he said, I hope you have a great day. And I was like, I want to buy tires from you. Like, I want to buy tires from you. Like, you didn't bug me. You gave me so much value. I was able to come and have an appointment. It was done in like 30 minutes. And then he didn't try to sell to me. And it was like something like click. Like sometimes the not selling is what sells, right?
It's the biggest sale of all. Yeah.
Right. Because sometimes this value that we keep providing and we keep this personal relationship with our list, it's amazing to me. It's like this. So it goes against everything that we think, that sometimes just creating this conversation with our people is where the sales come from too.
I love that. Yeah, that's really good. So I have a question about the actual email itself. Like, how long should that be? Do you have like a rule of thumb, how many words or any advice there?
A couple of things. I say, I don't think there's any perfect length. I think in general, what can you say in the most concise way as possible to get your story across? So, one of my email mentors, Chris Orzechowski, he always says that typically you need to go back and write your email and then cut 10% off. I have a client recently where I am been writing captions for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Well, of course, Twitter, you can only have 180 characters. And so I'm having to take these captions and condense it down. And I think it's been such a really good exercise for me to do even with my writing. Can I get my main point across in 180 words, the essence of it? And not that you need to cut it that short, but it did make me think, like, where can I cut some words out of my writing that are maybe bulky that I don't need in there? So that's the first thing. Laura Belgray, once again, who I adore, she always says that no one ever complained about an email being too short. So I don't think it has to be a certain amount of length. I think you have to make sure that you can convey your message as clearly as you can in the shortest amount of words. Maybe for some people that's 300 words. Maybe for some that's 5. Some, you could write up to 1,000 words if you're really telling an interesting story. But sometimes we also give details that aren't necessarily needed. One of the writing exercises that I try and go through, and I did it this morning with a caption, each sentence you write should get the reader to want to read the next sentence. And when I look at it from that eye, I think, okay, could I cut this out and go to the sentence below that and have it still make sense? Would they be missing out on any of the major details or my main point if I cut this out? And if the answer is they wouldn't be missing it, I cut those words. So I do think that this is something, though, an exercise that will take time, especially if you haven't written a ton of these before. Unfortunately, with writing and probably most things in life, the more you do it, the easier it is. So, but no, I don't think that there's any perfect length on emails.
Okay, that's good. Okay, that's good to know. And I like that exercise that you just put us through, because I can see myself cutting things out when I need to, and that makes perfect sense. So I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, just briefly, but how often do we send these emails out?
Right. Like I said earlier, I think once a week is optimal. And by doing that, you're keeping in constant communication with your list. So, and we touched on this a little bit too in the last podcast episode that we did, where if someone doesn't want to hear from you, that often, they're most likely not going to be your client anyway. So I think it kind of is a good rule of thumb to really, get your niche down your list into the people that really want to hear from you. Of course, if you're just sending out random stuff, they might not want to hear from you. So if you're sending true value and, or, something in those categories that we talked about, and they decide they don't want to hear from you, they'll let you know when you're emailing them weekly, they'll be unsubscribing. So.
Okay, that makes sense. And then what about, is it the same thing like with social media as far as consistency goes? Is it the same day, same time that you send these emails out? And do you have a preferred date and time, or does it depend?
Well, once again, yes, I would always aim to do it on the same day. Okay. In a perfect world, I would do it at the same time. I think that is definitely planning things out ahead. I sometimes, I've written my draft, but I'm not finalizing it, and then stuff comes up. So I'm not perfect in this either. But yes, if you can send at the same time, the same day for sure. If you can do it at the same time, much, much better. But then people kind of know to look for you. And I think when you do this, you'll be surprised where someone goes like, hey, are you okay? I didn't get your weekly email this week. Or what's happening? Like, it's Tuesday and I didn't hear from you. And people start to look out when you are doing it. So yes, in terms of days and times, typically Friday is not a good day, although some people do send them Fridays and have it doesn't. I think it depends on where your audience is. And I think it's always good to test because every audience is a little bit different. I notice a higher open rate when I send mine at like 6 a.m. than when I send it at 10 o'clock. But that could be because my audience is a bunch of moms who's looking at their phones first thing in the morning, where your audience might be people that are able to look at their emails once they get into the office. So I think too, maybe looking at your open rates and seeing, okay, when I send things at this time, I notice a higher open rate, that just like with social media, right? It's one of those things where when your audience is available is always the best time to send something.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. I thought that would be the case, but you just never know. Because I think back in the old days, it was like they had a specific day and time that went across every industry, but not so much anymore.
Yeah, I've read, because especially when I was starting out, I think what I read was like between 10 and 12, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Mm-hmm. I typically don't send emails on Monday. And this, I honestly have like no research to back this up, but I feel like we're all inundated on Mondays, like getting back into the swing of things. So I send mine on Tuesdays. When I do things for clients, I usually do a Tuesday through Thursday window is in my mind when people are still like, Fridays, people are starting to leave the office. Monday, they're just getting back into the swing of things. But once again, this could be different for every industry.
Yeah, I'll just use a little example that I'm familiar with. One of my clients is a restaurant client. And so their big push is the weekends, and they do weekend dinner specials. So we send stuff out Friday morning because people are already starting to make plans for the weekend. So I think that's
definitely
different than maybe an accountant for that, for an example, would probably not be a prime time Fridays in the morning, So
I think that's a perfect example.
Yeah. So that's cool. Okay. Another question just about timing and stuff. I was just thinking in my mind, okay, there's 52 weeks in a year, right? So we have, 52 emails if we were going to do the weekly plan here. I guess when it comes to planning, and this might be another it depends type thing, but how much of a leeway or runway do you use to plan out your 52 emails for the year? Do you plan them out like a month at a time, a quarter at a time, or do you plan 52 potential topics? Maybe do a brain dump at the beginning of the year and start, like, how do you plan out your emails?
How do I plan them out? I'm more of the monthly person, and maybe going to like a quarterly, knowing that I have certain things coming up at this point. I'm looking at things from a quarterly basis. I would guess that most people say if you can go in and look at your calendar for a whole year. I think if you're someone who once again, it does depend on your business, because if okay, I have this program and it's going to launch 4 times this year. Mm-hmm. Yes, I would totally get this on the calendar. I would start thinking about it. And then you have like these basic, these touch points of, okay, I know in October this is coming up, so I got to start promoting it by the middle of August. But I would think that I would look at things on a quarterly basis and go, okay, what's coming up? What do I want to promote? And look at it like that. And then you can get more granular maybe when, once that month comes and you're looking ahead and going, okay, I think once again, it depends on how I'm probably not as organized as I should be. And sometimes it's hard for me to even think like, oh my gosh, what am I going to be doing in January? But I don't think it would hurt anyone to look at a calendar and think about their year in advance and what their major promotions are going to be and start scheduling them out and at least penciling them in to some degree.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Okay, so I know we talked about the different categories and things that we should be using, but are there some things that are considered valuable in an email? Like, what are those components that we should be adding that add value to an email?
I think it goes back to just like how you would maybe think about Instagram, and that if it's valuable to the client. So when I say valuable, I don't mean, I'm getting more tips. If it's making them feel inspired, understood, if it's giving them a laugh, and could it be educating them? All of those things to me speak to value. For some, and I wish I could remember who said this, but sometimes value is just getting a laugh during the day, having a moment where you're able to laugh at someone else's story or take them on a quick escape. So this value word that we all toss around a lot, I think we just have to think about, will it benefit my client in any way? Will it give me a more personable connection? Will it help them in their business? Is it something that, would I tell a friend? Would it help them? I always go in when I'm looking at emails and thinking about what I'm going to write and using personal stories. Can this apply to someone else's life, business, home? Could it help them? And if the answer is no, is it personally serving? Then it's probably not something that I need to send out. And it's a fine line at times, but I don't think that this is where I think people go, I don't know what to write on my emails. Mm-hmm. They think they have to be sending out more content. And that's not the case. Let's rein it back and think, what can I share with them that will be in one of those categories that we listed above that will just help them have, a slightly better day.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's cool. Okay. So now that we know all the things that we need to do, how the heck do we find the time to do it all? Like how do we get it done?
Well, I think the batching that the fancy batching word that we all like to use is truly the case. When the beginning, sorry, I'm stepping over my words. Looking at your calendar at least a month in advance and laying out your content so that you know at least which buckets of categories that you're going to write in is going to help you. So even if you started this month, I think it might seem like a little rough. But now that I know that I need a story or some for each one of these categories, I'll think when something comes up in my day-to-day life that I can apply, I'll be like, oh, I can use that for next month's email. I can use that for next month's entertaining email because that would be really funny and this could apply to my business in this respect. So the way you find time, I truly believe that once you give your content a little structure, you will be able to find these stories and parallels that you can use in metaphors, analogies that you can use in your emails. You'll start noticing, you'll be like, oh yeah, there it is. Now I can use it in this and I can jot down the idea. So even if the whole email isn't written out, you have the idea of what you're going to write possibly. At least that's how it works for me. When these things happen, for example, the tire company, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's my email, so that's like kind of like my behind the scenes email and how people can use this for their selling. So that is the first way. If you can sit down and have these categories out and flush it through and start writing even the drafts of your emails. And I will say it's probably something that's maybe a little bit different than an Instagram caption. I find that when I do some writing and I leave and then I come back, then I can actually perfect it. So at least getting these major categories, maybe sitting down and choosing a time that you're going to go through and write at least a draft, you'll notice that when it comes time to actually get the email out, you've done about 80% of the work.
Okay, that's a good tip. Is there like a tool or anything that you use to keep all your ideas and stuff organized and maybe your schedule of email organized? How do you do that?
Probably not as organized as I could be. So I am like, when those ideas come to me, I have a notes on my phone that's email ideas. And I try and be really specific with myself because I feel like I could write something right now. And then in a week from now, I can be like, what the heck does that even mean? So even giving like a sentence of like what I meant. So that's where I keep track of, for me. And then I'm old school. And I even do this for clients. I have like a paper calendar for my clients. I will actually like print out a calendar from like just Google. And especially too, if I'm doing major planning and I write it all out. But I think it kind of depends on how you are and what your system is. I like the old paper way. You could use a Google Calendar. Trello is another. When I'm doing planning for clients, I'll start with that paper calendar and then I transfer over into Trello. And that might be or any type of Asana, any type of project management. And then if you have a team, this would work really well too. But that's where you could go in and keep, maybe some of these ideas, inspiration. You could make notes in those and then you have them access to them and you could pull them over into your weekly emails. So that's another way that I would do it.
Cool. Wow. This was really, really good. Lots of really great information. I think people are going to get a lot out of this. Before we end today, is there something else that you want to let us know about, or do we cover everything?
No, I have a couple of things. If you're looking for more guidance on like the step-by-step how to like write each one of these emails, I have a free guide that you could go to my website, thesocialrescue.com/email. This guide is how to create emails that get clicked, convert, and take less than 30 minutes to write. And I really go over step-by-step, from your subject line into your closing of what you should put into these emails. And so you can can use this as a guide to help you get these written. And then we didn't touch on this as much, but the other type of emails that I always mention to people is to create a welcome series. When someone signs up to be on your email list, is to create a welcome series, which welcomes them into your circle and your tribe and creates an even deeper connection. And this fall, I'm planning on doing a Write Your Welcome Series workshop. So if you go to that link that I mentioned, and you'll probably have in the show notes, you can sign up for a wait list to get more information for that. That's coming up in the fall.
Oh, that's so exciting. I think that's one of the ones that I struggle with a lot is what is my welcome series? I can't wait for that. That's going to be great. So, again, we'll put everything in the show notes. We'll put the link to the free guide. Where can people find you on Instagram? What is your handle there?
My handle on Instagram and Facebook is at The Social Rescue. And then my website is thesocialrescue.com.
Awesome. Brenna, thank you so much for being with us here today. It was such a great interview. Lots of great information. I can't wait for everybody to start implementing it.
Thank you so much for having me again. I really appreciate it.
Hey there, I just want to say thank you for spending time with me here today. I know your time is super valuable, which is why I am dedicated to providing lots of usable, actionable information in the shortest amount of time possible. Before you go, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a future episode. And if you have ideas or topics you would like me to cover in an upcoming show, let me know about it in the comment section provided.